let's talk about this matchup. Texas comes in against Arizona State. Arizona State, obviously winners of the Big 12. Would they be in the playoff if they didn't win the Big 12? Absolutely not. For some fucking reason, I keep seeing quotes and press clippings of Sam Leavitt and Skattebo talking about how they're going to, like, I saw Leavitt say, I'm going to prove I'm the better quarterback than Quinn Ewers. I saw Skattebo saying, I'm going to run all over them. Like, I don't know what they're – usually the teams that talk like that as big underdogs aren't real. I don't see how this team competes with Texas. You tell me if you disagree. But I was looking at it, and we'll dump – I want to hear your keys to the game. I want you to deep dive everything because I love listening to you talk about Texas football. But from my perspective, what I see is this, just based on the surface level. Texas has the number one pass protecting offensive line in college football. Now, I'm curious the health of Cam Williams and Jake Majors, right? Concussion, correct? Or I don't know if was it a concussion? I don't know what it was.
He's going to play.
He's going to play. Okay,
yeah,
so number one pass protecting group in college football, according to Pro Football Focus, going up against the 132nd ranked pass rushing defense out of 134 FBS teams. They get no pressure on the quarterback. Texas protects better than anybody. And the secondary for Arizona State is not good. I just don't see how they stop Texas. I think Texas has to stop Texas for this to be remotely close. That's my opinion. I obviously could. We've seen Georgia had some success running the ball 2 times. This is not Georgia, right? It's not the same talent on the offensive line. It's not the same caliber of 4-star and 5-star guys. This is Arizona State. I see Texas blowing them out of the water, and I'm usually pretty pessimistic. Tell me your thoughts on the game. Deep dive. Take this wherever you want to go.
I'll start with Arizona State. I'm going to take you back real quick, and this is going to feed into Arizona State to last year. Okay, so Texas is going to Ames, Iowa, to play Iowa State on the road. They have to beat Iowa State. They go to the Big 12 championship game, and then they have to beat Iowa State. They crush Texas Tech. They crush Oklahoma State, win the Big 12, go to the playoff. Jared Huffer was a starting interior offensive lineman for Iowa State last year, and he went out and talked a whole bunch of shit prior to that game. And Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, I mean, I'll use the word annihilated the interior of the Iowa State offensive line. They couldn't do anything. Then they go and play the Big 12 championship against Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon's talking all that shit. We'll get Texas held to under 40 rushing yards. Okay. For whatever reason, when you give this team bulletin board material, it never ends up well. And by the way, I wouldn't really talk that much shit when one of the best pass rushers in college football in Colin Simmons, who is a true freshman and won freshman of the year, is coming in with 11 sacks. It's going to be a field day in that backfield. Now, when you look at Arizona State top to bottom, no Jordan Tyson. Big deal, right? Jordan Tyson not being available against the best secondary in college football, that's going to pose a really big problem. So what Arizona State's going to do is they're going to look at this as a battering ram, shrink the game, right? Yep. And so, yes, you can do that with a guy like Skattebo, but not against this front, not against this defense. I don't see unless Leavitt comes out in a Cade Klubnik style and just throws for 4 or 5 touchdowns. I don't see it. I don't see a path to a win at all.
Nobody on the outside, nobody in their receiving core outside of Tyson scares me at all from what I've seen on tape. And you probably deep dive it more than I do, but I look back and I watched a lot of game film of them. No one scares me on that roster. Obviously, they're a very good screen team. I think they use running back screens more than anybody in the country, but they just, besides, obviously Skattebo is great. He's great, but nobody on the outside. They're going to be one-dimensional, like you said, unless Leavitt just plays. He's got to be Superman. And even with Klubnik being Superman last week, Texas still covered the spread as a 13.5 point favorite. How do they win? I agree with you. I don't see a path here.
I love Kenny Dillingham. I think he's one of the up-and-coming. I think he's going to be a really, 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 really good college football coach outside. He's going to get out of G5 and he's going to go to Power 4 and do some really cool stuff. But to be fair, you never know when you have a guy like Skattebo. Skattebo is different, man. He's not just a in between the tackles guy. He catches the ball really well out of the backfield. The problem again,
receiving yards.
Problem for Arizona State is you have, at least in terms of when you look at the linebacking core for Texas and how they're utilizing coverage, Anthony Hill is going to be all over Skattebo. But also look for Leavitt to be able to create plays with his legs. The guy can move. He makes good throws off platform. I'm telling you right now, Leavitt's a future NFL player.
Really?
Period. Oh, yeah. He's the real deal. He's already getting put in like Heisman odds for next season in the top 10.
I didn't know that.
He's a good player. But for him to come out and say that he wants to prove to the world he's a better quarterback, it's not going to happen. Arizona State's banged up at the skill position. They're going to have to lean so heavily on Skattebo. He's going to get absolutely – they're going to have to – that guy's going to get maybe 25 carries. And that's not a recipe for success against a team like Texas. Texas, again, like what we spoke about in the last podcast or the last show, they're like Michigan from a year ago where they're not going to blow you out on the scoreboard, but they're going to dominate you on both lines of scrimmage. They're like a boa constrictor. This is a matchup nightmare for Arizona State. You look at Texas, Cam Williams is back healthy. Jake Majors is healthy. Kelvin Banks had another 10 days of rest, so he's going to be fully healthy. Isaiah Bond comes back. Texas is going to come into this game completely healthy across the board. Quinn Ewers, ankle's not as big of an issue anymore. We saw him in the first half last week. Looked really good. I think that Texas is going to definitely cover. I think the spread right now is 12.5.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that line's probably going to move up prior to Wednesday, and I see them covering without a doubt in my mind.
I think so too. And to your point about Leavitt having to use his legs, I kind of agree. And we talked about Klubnik and how important his legs have been. 13 carries for 5 yards against Texas. So they've done a good job against running quarterbacks. They did it against in the Texas A&M game against a mobile quarterback as well. They did a good job containing him. So, I don't know that Leavitt will be able to win with his legs, but I agree. Like it just feels like he's got to have like a monster game. A monster game can just keep it remotely close.
A key stat I think we should look at, though, with the Clemson game is if you remove sack yardage from the rushing totals, Klubnik was effective running the ball. Like
how many sacks did he take?
I think 4. Let me take a look real quick just so I can.
That's the one thing that I don't like about college football is that it skews the rushing stats with sacks.
Yeah, so they might have had more. They maybe even got up to 7. Let me take a look. So they had 1, 2, 3. No, they only had 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. But Klubnik finished with 5 rushing yards. But he had the longest rush of the day was 11 yards.
11. He had an 11-yard scramble. Yep.
Kind of gives you an idea of what that looked like. But they even threw in some design quarterback runs for Klubnik in that game. So I don't know. I still think Texas covers. I really don't think it fucking matters what the Arizona State game plan is coming in. I think that Texas, even if they play vanilla football, is just going to win the game outright by multiple scores.
One more question. I agree with you 100%. I think that's I think you broke it down perfectly. One more question for you, and I think I know the answer, but just curious. Any concern with the fact that, and I think it's kind of the rule of there's like this old college basketball rule that I think this applies to, where it's like you're going to play 25 games at your level. You're going to play 5 way below and 5 way above. And that game for Klubnik was one of his way above games. He was incredible. But does it concern you at all that he threw as well as he did on Texas's defense? I know they've been the best secondary in the country all year. He threw for 336. He had an 82 QBR. Was it just what I'm saying, where it's just one of those one-off where he's back home in Austin, he played an incredible game, or is there any concern about what we saw and how he did that against them going forward? Maybe not for Arizona State, but for either Ohio State or Oregon in what might be a de facto national championship game in a couple weeks.
Well, looking forward with Ohio State and Oregon, you got to clean it up. Multiple coverage burns on their last touchdown drive. On the drive where Texas had the goal line stand and Bill Norton made the play of his life. They went after Manny Muhammad, something I have not seen all season. I think they threw at him 4 straight times.
I mean,
it was reminiscent of Michael Penix in the Sugar Bowl last year, right? Just dropping him in the bucket. So I think to answer your question, it's a mixture of both. I think Cade Klubnik came way up high and played the best game of his college career. And on the back end, the Texas secondary had a mediocre day, right? Because for the most part, they kept everything in front of them. And even when they went man-to-man across the board, Klubnik, sometimes as a defensive back, man, like the quarterback throws a good ball, you're playing good in pass coverage, and you know, you give up a completion. Like, it happens. But no, I'm not concerned at all. You got the Thorpe Award winner back there. You have the highest rated safety per PFF in college football, Michael Taft. Andrew Makuba's probably been the best defensive player on that team over the last
He's been
3 to 4 weeks. And then like, even in the rotation piece, he's still got Kobe Black, and Gavin Holmes made a couple big plays in that game. I just don't see Leavitt making a difference like what we saw Klubnik do.
Yep. I don't either. And I also think, like we mentioned earlier, with Tyson out and the lack of weapons, even some of those guys like Wesco, there's some NFL level receivers they're guys who are going to be NFL players in that Clemson receiving room that Arizona State does not have. So that's another aspect as well, I would say.
Interesting dynamic. Arizona State has multiple scholarship players that played at Texas. Troy O'Mary. You have Jamon Tapp. You have Jake Smith, who is currently 3rd on the team in receptions with 6. So I'm at least in terms of the skill positions. So I'm telling you, it's a very interesting dynamic at play. Zach Swanson, again, a couple weeks back, prior to Texas even playing Clemson, was like, oh, yeah, you know, well, this is more of a family than, you know, what I experienced in Austin. Talked all that shit. Yeah. Well, and the phrase for Texas all season has been fuck around, find out. I think that on Wednesday, it's going to be a healthy dose of fuck around, find out.
I completely agree. I think we're going to see a lopsided scoreboard similar to the games we saw in the first round across the board.